So what do Charles Fox, punks, Lucille or Lady Duff Gordon, and the average American housewife all have in common? Candy-colored hair, baby! I'm serious though. Today, we are going to be diving into the history of these brightly colored locks, because as much as modern history might want to give credit to the punk scene of the 1970s for starting this brightly colored hair trend, the reality is that festively hued hair has been fading in and out of fashion for centuries. Look, I have been obsessed with like brightly colored hair since I was a kid. Like, I remember when the trend kind of restarted in the mid to late 1990s with like pink and green and blue and orange hair, and I just remember thinking it was literally the coolest thing ever.
Wow, I never dreamed that I'd look like this.
So much so that when I was at theater camp, there was a girl in the summer camp who had like pink in her hair, and I begged her to dye like just the tiniest little sliver pink with her manic panic, and I remember thinking
I was like the coolest thing of all time.
I was also totally terrified to tell my mom because I thought I would get in trouble. Side note, one of my summer camp counselors for that camp was actually Arian Moayed, so you know, Stewie from Succession, so you know, hashtag flex. I finally did get to live out my dreams. So even if you go back to like some of the really early videos on my channel, you'll notice that my hair is actually a really, really dark purple. So I've been able to live the dream, but I am now back to my natural colored hair. I am going gray. And frankly, the thing that I'm looking forward to the most when it comes to turning gray is I'm just gonna slap it with some bleach, and then I'm just gonna be like a pastel like Easter egg all day, every day. While wildly tinged manes have gained broad acceptance in North America and Europe with celebrities, influencers, athletes, kids, parents, even grandparents wearing the literal rainbow on their heads at this point, our recent history sees the trend starting with the punk movement of the mid to late 1970s. And with that, the two biggest and most well-known hair dye manufacturers of these bright colors, Manic Panic and Crazy Colors, both actually have their origins in the mid to late 1970s, as well as within the punk scene. Manic Panic, especially in the United States, they were the first punk store in New York, or in the entire United States, in the 1970s. And while both brands are still staples within the festively hued hair world today, the popularity of this hair dye craze has led to a lot of scientific advancement and a huge amount of brands coming onto the scene to pick from. However, before the reign of Manic Panic began, we need to go back a couple hundred years to one of the first known instances of candy-colored coiffures being extremely popular, and that is, unsurprisingly, on this channel, the 18th century. The sponsor for this week's video is Birch Living. So Birch is a premium mattress in a box company that produces mattresses and sleep products that are stylish, comfortable, and environmentally conscious.
Mattress, it's upside down, but...
So their non-toxic mattresses are actually produced right here in America. There's only 8 materials used in the production of their Birch Luxe mattresses. That's organic wool, organic cashmere, natural latex, and organic cotton, and also steel. The Birch Luxe mattress is also created with breathability, cooling, and targeted lumbar support in mind. We've been sleeping on this mattress for over a week now. We are both sleeping through the night. We're not waking up. We're not waking each other up. I cannot tell you how grateful I am to actually have like a good night's sleep. So we actually ended up getting the Birch Luxe mattress and the mattress topper, and it is so comfy cozy. It's so like just, oh, it just is like this big woolen marshmallow. Birch using like natural 100% wool is just such a big deal to me. Their wool is actually through Wool Integrity New Zealand. It's really sustainable. It meets really high standards for sustainability. We're also Green Guard certified here. We're GOT certified. There's no VOCs. There's no off-gassing. It's all organic materials, so it's a very sustainable mattress. And the nice thing is too, is that obviously since they are a mattress in a box company, it's delivered directly to your door. It's really easy to unbox. I am in a much better mood, in part because I've actually been having really good night's sleeps thanks to Birch mattress.
We're tired from moving.
Oh my god, it's comfortable.
If you wanted to give Birch a try as well, you also will get a 100
night sleep trial. There's also a 25-year warranty on this mattress, so it is meant to last you a long time. And if you don't like the mattress, they'll come and pick it up and they'll issue you a refund. So it's really actually a pretty safe bet. When you order a Birch mattress, you get 2 free pillows made out of recycled plastic water bottles that are breathable and better for the environment. And I gotta be honest with you guys, like, I have been sleeping with their pillows and that pillow is very comfortable and it is not hot. It does a good job supporting my head. So look guys, I love my Birch mattress. I love my Birch Luxe mattress. I love my Birch mattress Luxe mattress topper. I basically sleep on a woolen cloud every night and I am a much happier person for it. So if you would like to give Birch mattress a try, go to www.birchliving.com/AbbyCox to get $400 off your Birch Luxe mattress. And don't forget those 2 free pillows too. So with that, thanks again to Birch Mattress for sponsoring this video. Let's talk about hair, baby.
Thanks again to Birch for sponsoring this video. As many of you know, I've been researching 18th century hair care and hairstyling for almost 10 years now. And while we've discussed the hows and the whys and the experiences around... Hi. Hello. Hi. You're very pretty. Yeah. Evil minion. And while we've discussed the hows and the whys and the experiences and all that stuff around using 18th century hair powder and pomade, can you not? We've never really discussed the more colorful and eccentric options that were actually available during that time. So while more natural shades like brown or black or yellow were more popular, colors like blue and pink also existed and were sold in shops, or you could even make them at home with your own recipes. Like this ad from Lewis Hendry's shop from 1778, in the powder section, we actually see a huge and diverse assortment of powders available for purchase. Listen, I know that some of you right now are about to write in the comments, but Abby, violet, rose, and pink are also flowers.
How do you know that they're colored powders?
Here's why, hun. In the best hairdressing manual ever, Plakakamos from 1782, it has actually recipes in the back on how to make rose and pink hair powder. Rose being pink in color and pink being blue in color, but scented with the flowers pinks. Because that's not confusing at all. Now, when we look at the recipe, it is obvious that the rose and the pink powders are brightly colored because rose contains carmine and pink contains Prussian blue. Yes, these are both painting pigments and dye pigments, and no, I don't want to think about what would happen if you got caught in the ring with these colored powders in your hair. You cannot put colored powder on freshly pomaded hair either because they are painting pigments. And what's pomade made out of? Fat. And how do you make oil paints? With oil. What's oil? It's a fat. So can you just like imagine what happens. You get paint. You wanna know how I know? Because I made that mistake, friends, many, many years ago, and I still owe Samantha a better apology than what I did. Don't put the colored powder on freshly pomaded hair. It will make you cry big cries and it will ruin basically everything in the room. So now, do we know if the violet powder listed in Lewis Hendry's ad was also colored? No, we don't actually know this for sure, but obviously purple is a pretty easy color to make. Pink hued hair powder definitely seems to be more common than other colors, and there are several extant portraits of women wearing it on their coiffures. And you do see references to pink powder more than others, at least from what I can tell, even though there are plenty of references to blue hair powder as well. But unfortunately, there's no real way to really confirm the color in written documentation without recipes, at least for pink powder. As I mentioned, the use of the word pink in this context is extremely confusing, thanks in part to Plakakamos. From the dramatic works of John O'Keefe, Esquire, 1798. By the way, this is a play. I have not read the play. I'm taking this completely out of context for the reference, so we're just gonna go with my interpretation of this performance. Mrs. Obb. It is he, I'll go and receive the dear captain at the door. Stage note, she sits, then rises. No, I'll go down by the elbow chair in the next room, but I must make myself tolerable. Stage note, puts blue powder on her hair. Septimus, blue powder? Well, if we must change the natural color of our hair, there may be as much sense in blue as a white head. Now, as for the popularity of blue-tinged tresses, we often look to Charles Fox, and one of the most common anecdotes about the former British Prime Minister is that he wore blue hair powder when he was a youth. I dug into the archives to try and find the origin of this factoid, and I couldn't find a solid primary source. I was able to find a Victorian reference referring to an 1806 magazine article, and then Kenna found the actual original magazine article from the monthly magazine, which was published in October 1806, which is a month after Charles Fox passed away. And this is what it says. It will be scarcely supposed by those who have seen Mr. Fox, or examined his dress at any time during the last 20 years, that he had been once as celebrated as a beau garçon. But the fact is that at this period, he was one of the most fashionable young men about town, and there are multitudes now living who still recollect his chapeau bras, his red-heeled shoes, and his blue hair powder. And so it's sort of a primary source because it is from like 1806, but all of that French fried references to like chapeau bras, red-heeled shoes, all of that just actually sits really awkwardly with me, and it has this like really pungent whiff.
This is a white.
Very odoriferous as hyperbole, especially since it was written after Fox passed away, and it doesn't seem to actually come from a direct quote about his life. However, I'm gonna leave this one open for debate. Do you actually have further information going beyond this quote about Charles Fox's hair? Anyways, I would love to hear it. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. What happened to this festive hair fad? Basically, once the use of hair powder stops at the end of the 18th century, early 19th century, we also stopped seeing unusually tinted tops, simply because there wasn't another way to achieve such artificial tones. Hair dye at the time focused on either lightening or darkening your hair with various levels of success.
You tell her in that at all, do you? I strongly suspect not. We can report back if we do see anything, but no, I don't think so.
And health risks. And I'm talking about lead. But what is interesting about the Victorian era is how they viewed brightly colored hair. I was able to find a few references from the Victorian period about unusual hair colors, including one that actually discussed how they believed Anglo-Saxons and early medieval people in England had blue, green, or orange hair. Here's a quote from The Art of Beauty by Mary Howes, 1878. Our Saxon ancestors appear to have dyed or otherwise colored their long bushy hair of a blue tint, as in Saxon drawings they are frequently thus portrayed. The use of colored hair powders and dyes was practiced, according to Josephus, by the Jews, who had a very extensive knowledge of the art of self-adornment. Just a side note, I think the Josephus reference is actually in regards to the sprinkling of gold dust in the hair. If anyone with knowledge of this has any additional information, please feel free to leave it in a comment below. I would love to know what you guys know. When I read this quote, I was immediately intrigued. I know next to nothing about Viking and age and early medieval clothing. Like, that is not what this channel's about, guys, right? I get all of my medieval clothing information from Jimmy the Welsh Viking. And so I asked him.
This is garbage. There's nothing to suggest that the Anglo-Saxons dyed their hair blue. What there is the end of the 18th century, where lots of people are getting really enthusiastic about manuscripts and about the medieval period, and they're laying the foundations for art history and archaeology as we know it today, but they don't really know what they're doing. In medieval manuscripts, all of the pigments are naturally derived, so you have metals and you have earth pigments, and these can change over time. They can break down, the chemical elements in them can oxidize, and they can change colour. And we know that, but not your average person who has lots of money but no training at the end of the 18th century knows that. So you have things like dark colours becoming lighter, you have blacks becoming greens or blues, or reds becoming browns and yellows, and that kind of thing, over the centuries of these inks and pigments being exposed to the air, being exposed to moisture, and they change colour. We also have manuscripts like the Old English Hexateuch, which is a biblical manuscript from the 11th century, and I suspect that this is one of the big ones because all of the people who are elderly in the manuscript, and because it's the Old Testament of the Bible, most of the people in it are old, have this bluey grey coloured hair. But if you take a couple of seconds and look at things like sword blades and rocks, they are the same colour. So this is just the grey pigment that they had to work with when they were making this manuscript. So no, they're not dyeing their hair blue. What's happening is people 1,000 years later are seeing these manuscripts, not really understanding how they work or how they've changed over time, and coming to all of the wrong conclusions, but probably looking fabulous as a result.
Even though the whole like Saxon thing is bogus, what I do find interesting is how the author continues discussing the concept of brightly colored hair and its potential actually attractiveness. Mostly because we associate vivid hues with like counterculture or youth culture, and there's a certain sort of like grotesqueness associated with it, I guess you could say. Like in the 70s, 80s, 90s, there was just this kind of alternative feel to it that was not considered conventionally attractive, I think I should say, because obviously you guys know I loved it. So often we kind of think of like Victorians as like massive prudes with like big old sticks up their butts, But here they are like talking about how they could find like green hair could be pretty. She says, yet it would probably be a pretty fashion, and to many faces most becoming. If people whose hair is a gray-brown dye it a bright chestnut, they might as well just dye it blue. In short, blue hair good, bustle bad. And as another fun reference that has very little context, there apparently was like this brief threat of women in the 1860s dyeing their hair to match their dresses. If he had heard of the threatened fashion of dyeing the hair green, mauve, blue, or any other shade to match the color of the dress the lady may desire to wear, what then? An angel still? An angel with green hair? A novelty indeed! Ironically, or unironically, this concept of matching one's mane to one's frock is actually the perfect segue into the next instance, where we see women wearing atypically toned dresses. Women's Wear Daily, published Friday afternoon, November 14th, 1913. The fashion sensation of the week has been wearing of colored wigs at the theater. This fashion was launched by Lucille, Lady Duff Gordon, at the Theatre Renaissance on the first night of l'Occident. Two young women, thought to be mannequins, that's models in today's modern language, wore colored wigs matching their respective gowns green and mauve. Needless to say, the attempt at bringing this mode into prominence attracted much attention, as all freak modes do, and it afforded the onlookers much amusement. Now, I don't know if this is just like residual trauma from Lady Duff Gordon surviving the Titanic like a year earlier, so she went all like, screw it, we're gonna die anyways, let's have fun with hair, or not, but either way, I love this trend. I also find it interesting that the designer who brought this style forward is a woman of the aristocracy. Yes, she is a designer. Yes, she was famous in her own right. And yes, she is a brilliant businesswoman. But her social status cannot actually be overlooked in this instance. While we still currently associate vivid and garish hair colors with counterculture, I find it fascinating that basically every instance leading up to the 1970s, the people who have started and enjoyed this trend of rainbow hair have been the aristocracy and the social elite. They were not only the ones who imagined this idea, but they're the ones who were able to wear it and make it fashionable. Within weeks of the Women's Wear Daily article, we're seeing other newspapers discussing New York and London society participating in this trend. The New York Times, February 1914. Headline, Stage Takes to Green Wig. London, February 1st. The green coiffure has now made its appearance on the stage. An actress in Bernard Shaw's playlet, The Music Cure, wearing a verdant wig with the author's full approval. Clarkson, a London costume maker, says he's received many orders from women well known in society and on the stage for the new coiffures. New York, he says, is not far behind London in its demand. The most popular color is a light blue or palish pink. Both light and dark greens are in vogue, while for dark women, the color is a deep purple. They might be referencing women of color at this particular instance. They may not be, I am not sure. I would love for it to actually be women of color, but given that it's the 19-teens and it's a massive publication, it's really hard to say. By April of 1914, colored wigs have officially made their debut in New York society. Variety, April 3rd, 1914. A strong counter-attraction to Panthea at the booth on the occasion of its premiere last Saturday night was Nora Bayes, seated in the orchestra wearing a green wig. It was one of the first public appearances of a colored wig in the New York other than on the stage. Who is Nora Bayes? She was a famous actress and singer during the 1900s and 19-teens and was very much considered the like quote-unquote typical eccentric celebrity, including multiple divorces, scandalous contract cancellations like feuds with Ziegfeld, like Florence Ziegfeld, and also she adopted a horde of children like in her late 30s. So it makes sense that Nora would wear these wigs to the theater to get attention. It was this really easy way to get a lot of free publicity, and it worked. We're reading the quotes today, right? So this colored wig trend had such like a grip on fashion. It's really easy to find references to colored wigs in 1914. They were really talking about it. Needless to say, the trend for brightly colored wigs to match your dress took society by storm in late 1913 and early 1914. Now, while this trend does seem to die out pretty quickly, we do see a resurgence of colorful wigs in the 1920s. Now, the wacky wigs of the 1920s were often made out of silk or raffia. Quote,
Barbaric fashions are now the rage in Paris, May 1923. Floss silk wigs are made in bright magenta, cobalt blue, corn yellow, and in several different shades of green. They are the most useful and effective for a dinner d'etat or headdress dinners, and they can be worn, as I have said, by daring girls at private entertainments of an exotic order. Awkward cultural appropriation optional. The type of wig that's illustrated in this article is called an Egyptian wig. You can see it's just a straight cut blunted bob, and it is made of parakeet green gloss silk. However, what's interesting actually is that the style of colorful like silken wigs that actually survive today seem to better match the descriptions from 1924. From the Chicago Daily Tribune, October 28, 1924. We observed that one courageous soul had braved the stares of the world and donned a shimmering silken wig in a golden pink hue that proved bewitching. Not a bobbed wig either, but a complete set of tresses that were swathed close and low across the forehead and tucked into little coils at the back of the head. And in this particular instance, the silk wig trend wasn't regulated to Paris, London, or New York. But even smaller cities like Indianapolis were discussing this quote-unquote new trend. From the Sunday Star magazine section, also October 1924. Many of the French couturiers are showing a silk wig to match the evening gown they display for Madame's inspection. Originally, the floss wig was designed to cover bobbed hair in its transitional stage from short to long. Now, however, the silk wig is a popular evening accessory in Paris. It's telling us that the wig was actually worn to get through the awkward growing out phase. And so it had a much more like practical purpose, but it's now being worn for fun. And obviously these fun colors are a part of that. Basically, it's been just 10 years later, almost to the day, and we're seeing the same exact trend, matching your wig to your dress happening. All right, so with that, let's go ahead and flash forward now to the 1950s and 60s, where we finally have better hair bleach and dye formulations and processes that give women the freedom to color their hair however they want. The women of the 1950s and 60s absolutely rocked unusual colored tresses. I present to you this. Check it. So I was actually able to find Dye Selector by Rue on eBay, and y'all, do you want to see what it has? Check it out. It actually has what they call party colors for temporary hair dye. They have different colors for toner as well. Silver mint, barely pink, lazy lilac, a delicate pink lavender. But we also have like grays and silver tones over here. So we have true steel, silver lining, which is a silvery blonde, shy violet. We had tons of colors here. Some of the names are amazing, like Mauve Decade, Merry Apricot. Like, I don't know who thought this one was a good idea, but you could also dye your hair Pretty Beaver. Also on the back here, we have the listing of what kind of dyes they are. So in the party colors, which are all the really bright greens and blues and apricots and whatever, those came in Fanciful dye. And over here, the Rue Fanciful Rinse, it's a temporary color that rinses in and shampoos out. It colors gray and adds depth of color and shining luster to natural hair. So obviously if you have naturally dark hair, it's not gonna actually make your hair look bright blue or bright green. But if you do have bleach blonde hair, it will actually color your hair. And if you didn't want to dye your hair, wigs again were a popular and readily available option and easily accessible to people because they were now being made in synthetic nylon. From Wall Street Journal, 1958. Wigs, once the mark of the elite in colonial America and Europe, are blossoming again, but in such wild hues as shocking pink, bright green, and lavender, in addition to the more mundane blonde, black, and brown. I'm almost over the top of my head with orders, Mr. Jacoby says, as he ticks off the names of retailers in such scattered cities as San Francisco, Dallas, Indianapolis, and Raleigh, which have all ordered wigs. Here we are, at the height of what I like to call the neo-Victorian era, where things really weren't great for a large percentage of the population. But we have housewives around the United States and Europe wearing wigs or temporarily dyeing their hair colors, which brings us back to the punks of the 1970s. I've been trying to understand why vivid dye jobs went from being socially acceptable and arguably signifying of the social elite to a hallmark of the punk movement, which is the antithesis of social acceptability and is proudly counterculture. The theory that makes the most sense to me is one that Nicole actually presented when I was talking about my confusion about this
this shift in our group chat. She argued that like maybe this has to do with men of a certain age wearing these quirky colors, rendering them unemployable, where the majority of previous instances of brightly colored hair being worn centered around women of certain social statuses who did not work. It begs the question then, like, should we actually be looking at brightly hued hair as another representation of the gender binary? Was green or orange hair of the 1970s shocking because it was worn outside the quote unquote correct gender norm and social class? I don't know. I was just here to tell you guys the timeline of it. And then this whole thing kind of came up and it brought up more questions than answers. I leave you all with this. I would love for someone else to kind of pick this up and dig into it. Like maybe there's something here that we can find. Maybe there's another YouTube creator who would be better to speak on this subject. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If you know of a creator that maybe they want to collab on this, like tag them. I would love to know what you guys think. With that, long live cotton candy hair, right guys? And if you enjoyed this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. It really does actually help. And if you want to hang out with me more, I upload every other Sunday, so feel free to subscribe. And I'll see you all back here next time with another video. And not as many bad wigs. Bye! Wayne's World! Excellent! Okay, but you're covering my mic now, baby. Thank you. No. Can you lay down? No. Can you sit? Oh, good job. Oh, no, didn't want that. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, like side note, I bought this wig because it said Jareth and like obviously talking a little bit about the 70s. I was like, oh, I should have like the David Bowie like labyrinth wig, but all I see is deranged emo kid. I was never an emo kid, guys. I don't listen to emo music. Wayne's World, excellent. Are you done?